Hi, my name is Randy Beardsley, and with the current Russian-Ukrainian conflict in full swing, several people have asked me, what's going on over there? What should America be doing? So I want to give a quick review of the events that have led up to this, what's going on now, what's the best course of action moving forward. Now, the region of Ukraine, it's been part of Poland through the years, Lithuania, and Russia over the centuries. From roughly the creation of the United States of America until 1990, a 200-year span, Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire, which included the Soviet Union period. So from an American perspective, Ukraine has almost always been part of Russia, 97% of our existence. And this distinction has had little or no impact on America. When the Soviet Union fell in the early 1990s, Ukraine, like several other states of the Soviet Union, they demanded independence and they became independent countries. Those on the eastern side of the country that had a Russian border, they always favored a return to Russia or independence from both Russia and the Ukraine. There were close to 10 million Russians in Ukraine. This is about 20% of the population, and most reside in these eastern areas. The western side, it's mostly Ukrainian. They supported independence. Ethnic Ukrainians make up about 75% of Ukraine. Even though Russians make up only about 20%, the country continued to be led by pro-Russian political leaders after the fall of the Soviet Union until 2014. Then riots and protests in Ukraine were organized and carried out. With international support in favor of the protesters, the government fell, a coup as some would say, and Ukrainians with Western ties have rolled ever since. These events have led to the current issues. As Ukraine continues to be led by pro-Western leaders, they want Ukraine to join NATO, even though this could lead to the possible stationing of NATO forces on the Russian border. Russians taking strong exception to this possibility. This isn't surprising, as America would never accept Russian troops to be stationed on our borders either. But Ukraine's desire to join NATO created this threat to Russia, and Russia wasn't going to accept that condition. There was another issue also. Millions of Russians that lived on the eastern side of Ukraine, they want independence, or they want to rejoin Russia as they've been for most of their prior 230 years. The Russians and the Ukrainians on their own, they couldn't resolve either of these issues through diplomacy. With Ukraine drawing closer to becoming a NATO member, this led to the current invasion of Russia into Ukraine, who's seeking to maintain a buffer state between Russia and NATO, and reunite with the eastern side Russians, or at least help them establish independence. These are complicated issues. I don't want to simplify them, nor do I want to fool anyone into thinking this is an obvious good guy, bad guy situation, because it's not. The point that I'm making is there are two sides to every issue. You're entitled to know both sides before you decide what the right thing to do is. Unfortunately, both sides of this issue have not been presented to the American people. We are in the "we will tell you how and what to think" media mode. We've gotten a simplified version. Russia, bad guy, war criminal. Ukraine, good guy. Obviously, no conflict is ever that simple. But the reporting seems to have been a non-stop infomercial on behalf of Ukraine, with really not a lot of reporting at all, just a lot of emotionally charged images and testimonials to tell you what to think. Russians are attacking babies, bombing maternity wards, cluster bombing children, attacking democracy, killing civilians. But are civilians still civilians if the government issues them automatic weapons and tells them to join the fight? Would these inexperienced civilians turned combatants, minus a Ukraine army uniform, get killed? Are they still considered combatants or civilians? Who knows? Truth be told, the media doesn't have a very good track record of accurately depicting what's going on the ground in these situations. But what if the issue is much more complicated than the simple narrative of Russia good, Ukraine bad? What if the reporting we are being given just isn't accurate? Can't be, you say. You saw it on the TV. Remember, we also saw it on the TV and we were told we needed to go to Afghanistan to destroy the Taliban. We were told in convincing fashion similar to what we're currently watching. Taliban bad, everybody else good. The Taliban were ruthless murderers. They killed women, children, everybody. They were a threat to your freedom and democracy everywhere. They could not have control of any part of Afghanistan. And if you fail to send your money and children off to Afghanistan, you could be a terrorist sympathizer who supports these ruthless killers. We believe them. It all seemed so convincing at the time. We sacrificed the lives of thousands of our sons and daughters, with tens of thousands of them more came home to us hurt and handicapped, just for this cause. What did we learn after the sacrifice? We learned that the Taliban really weren't that bad of guys. They were actually pretty good guys, such good guys that we gave them $85 billion in military equipment, control of the whole country, a new airport, and ongoing financial aid. The Taliban ended up being such trustworthy, nice guys, we entrusted them to provide perimeter security for our troops rather than American soldiers during the withdrawal. But they were so nice and accommodating, a bomber got through and blew up 13 of our troops. Now, there are a lot of families that wish that we knew the Taliban were good guys 20 years ago, because their sons and daughters would still be alive today, or they wouldn't be maimed or compromised from years of combat. We believe the media. They got it wrong, and it destroyed the lives of countless Americans and Afghans alike. Iraq wasn't much different. Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, no doubt about it. You saw it. You were convinced. He was using them on civilians. He was going to use them on you next if you sat back and did nothing. Send money, equipment, and your sons and daughters to Iraq. That was the battle cry on TV. Only those who support terrorist states with weapons of mass destruction would disagree with that. Always a simple narrative. Supporters of sending your children to Iraq? Good. Holding back your children? Bad. It was convincing stuff. You believed them. And just like Afghanistan, we sacrificed the lives of thousands of our sons and daughters, and over 30,000 of our troops received life-changing injuries there. But guess what? Saddam Hussein didn't have weapons of mass destruction. It wasn't true. The whole premise of the war was false. But finding out later that the premise was false, it doesn't change the reality that the lives that were lost were real. So once again, the drums of war are beating loudly for those of us naive enough to listen to them. The premise is simple, just like in Iraq, Afghanistan, countless other conflicts. The media will tell you who the bad guy is. You will spend your money, sacrifice your children's lives to kill the bad guy. But what if they're wrong? Again, are you willing to risk your children's life on their word? What if the issue is more complicated than the good guy, bad guy scheme? What if both sides have legitimate grievances? Is there a better solution in a Russian invasion? Yes, you better believe it. But should Russia have to accept NATO troops on its borders when we won't accept or allow Russian troops on our borders? Probably not. Is there a solution to the separatist regions of the East that don't include an armed conflict? I bet there is. And although you've been exposed to a barrage of commentary on TV about Americans' lack of help for the designated good guy in this case, that seems disingenuous to me. You and me, the American taxpayer, we've been given several hundred millions of dollars of aid each year to Ukraine for the last 20 years. And we increased that to over $500 million a year over the better part of the last 10 years. And a lot of these billions are military aid. There are millions of Americans in our country that need help. We didn't help them, though. Instead, we sent this money to Ukraine. So I'm not falling for this Americans have failed anyone guilt trip. Neither should you. If anything, we failed our own citizens. Now, nobody likes to see war. I want it to end just like you. But war is like a fire. It spreads if it isn't contained. And it really spreads if you add fuel to the fire. But the message we keep hearing is it's your obligation as a decent person, as a freedom and loving American, to add fuel to the fire by sending money, equipment, and your children off to Ukraine. Of course, this is a failed logic. You don't bring more wood and gasoline to a fire if you're trying to put it out. And you don't send more equipment and soldiers to a war unless you want to escalate the war. That just increases the death and the damage. It doesn't reduce it. That's a failed logic that you're being instructed to use. Put more wood into the fire to put it out. Doesn't work. There's another way. What if we got the groups together to have a real negotiation to save lives and solve the concerns of both sides? What if we used our energy and economic influence to pressure and incentivize both sides to work out a compromise? It hasn't happened because the media is hidden behind a good guy, bad guy scheme. It doesn't recognize or even allow you to know that both sides have legitimate grievances that need resolved. As a result, there hasn't been any interest by either party to work and negotiate in good faith for a win-win solution. Ukraine hasn't been willing to address any Russian concerns, regarding their border security or how to address millions of Russians on the eastern side of Ukraine that want independence. And Russia clearly hasn't been willing to continue to negotiate. They've just chosen war instead. America should have taken a lead role in addressing these concerns over 8 years ago. But instead, we were fueling the fire by giving the Ukraine billions of dollars of military and economic aid to help propel this crisis into the current state. So rather than continue to escalate the war, why doesn't America do what it should have done 8 years ago? Get Russia and Ukraine to the bargaining table to work out a solution. Create a win-win solution for all parties. I promise a solution will be found. But this time, let's find it before we sacrifice any more lives or money, not after like we normally do. So the question is, will you fall again for the let's bring more wood and gas to the fire plan to help put the fire out? I hope not. That's a bad plan. I'm out on that plan, and I hope you are too. How about rural American leadership that saves lives and problems? In that case, I'm in. We have to reject these failed policies. We have to reject more lost lives that we can't bring back when we learn later that the information that we were told wasn't the whole truth after all. Demand that our government work to create a real solution to this problem by using our influence to bring the parties together. Let's resolve the problem, not escalate it, so we can stop any more loss of life to Ukrainians, Russians, or Americans.